The beings themselves do not live in the 3D primarily. And so my unique ability is to be able to travel between the dimensions so that I can speak with, or the beings will come into the 3D reality where I can see them. The communication then just comes through as an energetic pattern or frequency.
Welcome to the Angelic Frequency Podcast. We are your hosts, Christina Aroche
and Luisa Vélez, and today we have the pleasure of speaking to Jan Wakefield. She is a wonderful, special channel that has been working with the Blue Healers for a while now. So this is an interdimensional episode. Let's dive in.
Hi, Jan. Welcome to the podcast. We are so excited to have you here. So thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me. I'm super excited to be here and to share and to just get to know you two a little bit better.
Absolutely. Well, it's a pleasure to have you here. We're so excited. I'm particularly excited about this. Ever since we met you at an event, we were just so curious and drawn to you and your work. But for our listeners and people who are not familiar with you and your work, we'd like to start there at the beginning. So can you tell the audience who you are and what you do?
Yeah, absolutely. My name's Jan Wakefield, and I am a channeler. So, for those people who do not know what that means, I go into a little bit of an altered state and generally answer questions for people. And the answers come from extradimensional beings. So, I primarily channel a specific group that I call the Blue Healers. Met them in a very special way. If you'd like to hear that story in a little bit, you can certainly ask. And the Blue Healers will then also translate for other extra-dimensional beings. So the Pleiadians, the Arcturians, the Andromedans, and on and on. So it's really a wonderful way for people to connect to being in the quantum field, because when I do sessions or public channeling sessions, people often find themselves in that quantum field, which I would simply call a meditative space.
That's amazing. So interesting. And this is probably semantics and not important at all, because I do want to hear how you initially connected with the Blue Healers and what that was like. When you say it's interdimensional, right? Beings. So when we think about beings from the stars or from somewhere else, or we think about, extraterrestrials that come from a different planet, a different star. Are we talking about the same thing, or do we literally are talking about things that move between dimensions and that are not necessarily in our physical known universe, but beyond that too?
Good question. Good question. So there's interdimensional, extradimensional. Sometimes these terms are used interchangeably. So the beings themselves do not live in the 3D primarily. So they are outside of our visual capacity because, of course, 3D visual capacity is very narrow. And so my unique ability is to be able to travel between the dimensions so that I can speak with, or the beings will come into the 3D reality where I can see them. Perhaps other people cannot. Either way, it doesn't matter. The messages are still the same. So you could say aliens. I have heard that term before. If it lands for people, great. Because alien beings, while they may be in 3D, we are still a species that cannot travel very far through space. So it's a moot point. The communication then just comes through as an energetic pattern or frequency, which again is outside of human capacity for the most part. But there are people like myself, I feel truly blessed to have a little bit of a gift where it's easier for me to communicate through the dimensions, through time and space, in order to give people answers.
That's so cool. I love that so much. And I love that just in general, this conversation of the interdimensional beings and just, aliens or again, whatever you want to call it. But I just love that is, I don't know, at least our experience, it's becoming more and more kind of prominent, so to speak, where we're meeting more people who are connecting that way or have information that way. So I think it's absolutely fascinating. And on that note, I think this is a perfect segue to hear more about your story and your journey of how that actually happened. Like, walk us back to maybe a little bit pre meeting Blue Healers and then how that was that happened.
Okay, great. Thanks for letting me share the story because it is truly interesting. And just as to put it out there first and foremost is it I truly believe that it is important to normalize conversations that are new to some people. And because this has been part of who I am for my entire life, it has always been normal for me. So to have the opportunity to just share in a way to let everyone know this is a normal part of life for many people. And it's just now becoming part of mainstream conversation. So, to talk a little bit about how I came to this place, as a child, I already was communicating with spirits. So, deceased relatives. I went to my first funeral when I was maybe 6 or 7, and I thought it was really interesting that there was this moment that I could speak with the person who had departed. And I realized very quickly as a child, you do this, you realize very quickly, nobody else can see or hear this person who is unseen now. And so that was when I had a cognitive moment. Being on a spiritual path or seeking information, psychic readings, etc. I've been doing all of that. I've found it fascinating, interesting my entire life. So it's always been a part of my world. But as far as normalizing the conversation, all through my life, I did shamanic training where the shamans teach you how to journey, is the word they use. It's just going into trance state and doing the exact same thing that I do now. So, what brought me to the awakening in my adult life? Because, of course, as a child, you begin to fall asleep, especially if your parents aren't having this conversation and you don't grow up in a situation where it's already a normal conversation. Well, it was for my children, but that's another story. So, I was very, very sick. So, for about 10 years, I had a chronic medical condition that was the prognosis was not good, not good. And during that time, I was embarking on the inward journey more and more because the medical system was not able to provide a solution for me. So then the memories started coming back of the experiences I had all through my life of being able to communicate with the unseen world. And I was grateful for that. And when I started doing meditation, which ultimately was how I cured myself from a chronic medical condition, I would spend time in the quantum field in meditation. And during that time, then the beings were, it's kind of like they say, you recognize them and then they see you and the conversation happens. It's just like in 3D, where suddenly you're in a coffee shop and you strike up a conversation with someone you've never met before. They speak back. It was very simple for me. So, over the 2.5 years when I was meditating and I cured myself from the medical condition, I had several encounters with the blue healers. They are healers, and their purpose is to travel throughout the universe, and they work with specific groups. And there are groups of blue healers that work specifically with humans on Earth in the capacity of healing. And so there they were. And I thought, well, I have nothing else to do here. I'm just hanging around for an hour, 2, 3, 5 hours in meditation. Why not just chit chat with the beings who show up? And so they taught me a lot about healing. They taught me a lot about compassion, connecting to my heart, being in a state of coherence, and what it meant to be human, shockingly, as funny as that might sound. But what it meant for me in this body, in this lifetime, to be human and to be assisting others in the same process. So while there's a lot more to that history, because it would go into past lives and starseed origins, again, we have 1 hour and we can certainly return to these conversations again.
My goodness, fascinating. I could go on and on for hours about this. I'm curious about one thing before we dive into, like, you just, yeah, then you open up a whole new world of things, and I'm staying on technicalities maybe, but I'm curious about your experience as a channeler of spirits and human spirits, right? And things of more connected to our own energy, and in transitioning into channeling other types of beings. Was there an adaptation? Is there a difference in higher frequency? Is there, how do you adapt to that? I mean, they're living beings just somewhere else. So how does that change your experience as a channel?
Yeah, I love this question because there was an evolution. I started just with the unseen world in 3D. And when we think about that, we think our deceased relatives or just random people who passed away and said they're still hanging around. All of that is true for me, and all of that always has been true for me. And so it was me allowing myself to say, oh, there could be a broader world of understanding. And I learned that through my entire shamanic training. And the shamans would say something like, those are the bus people. They would point up to the sky. Those are the bus people, like that come on the spaceships. They wouldn't, that we don't talk to them, is what they would say. And I thought, well, I want to talk to the bus people. So they gave me all the skills to do it. So I started exploring what that meant. And of course, we're talking translation. They didn't speak English, was not their first language. So whatever that meant to them, it didn't matter to me. I
Right.
wanted to know who the bus people were.
Right.
So I started really exploring that. And it was also in the, as you begin to evolve and allow yourself more wonderful experiences, it's like anything that you learn, the more you dive into a subject, the more it opens up for you because you create new channels, new pathways in the brain that allow for new information to come in. And so when I was unwell and I was seeking solace in the quantum field, the blue healers arrived. I would only channel the blue healers. And in my earliest videos, you can see where it was there was a transition for me. Very, very obvious transition if you watch my YouTube videos from the beginning. And I left them all raw so that it would be
Mm.
really clear that there was an evolution in the experience. And then the blue healers invited other extra dimensional beings. And these dimensions, the vibrational frequencies were different. Now, that's true of just individuals. It's what makes us unique here on Earth as well. But when higher dimensional beings would come into the space, there was always a little transition. And so some of them are what I would call to be in a form. So they look like they have two arms and two legs or some type of creature. But then there are also beings that I've spoken to now who have no form at all. They come in the form of what's more like a mist, or my brain will give it like parameters of some kind that make sense to me, and it's always based on
Right.
almost like weather in a sense. They're more elemental is what I would call
Mhm.
it, but not elemental in the way humans describe the elementals that live on this planet. That's
Mhm.
something different. uh,
That's
yeah, so that's pretty much it. Yeah.
That's
wow.
so cool. I love that. So interesting to me. And one of the questions that was coming up for me is just a curiosity in terms of, I guess for one, I'm kind of curious, like, are the blue healers, are they here to work with humanity directly, or is it more like they're bringing through, it's more like messages for us to support our awakening, if that makes sense, you know? And then
Mhm.
I guess part two of that question is, could anyone technically open up to channel the blue healers, or do they work only with specific people or frequencies or groups, or like how does that work in that way?
Yes, we are all natural born channelers. And there is no distinction between healing and evolution. It's the same thing.
Mm.
So to be more specific, the the way I have experienced it and the way it has been explained to me when I ask these questions is that humans are well, 3D is a lower vibrational frequency, and existing on Earth in our bodies, we are bound by the evolutionary principles that are 3D, part of 3D information, or Earth 3D information. And so, in our evolution, if you think about it, you look at history, it's somewhat clear, although not a lot of missing pieces there. But we have an idea that humans evolved from where they were 60,000 years ago to where we are today. And so, what that means is we could say the same things happening in the internal world, right? So we're born and we have this experience. And for those of us who are parents, some kids are more evolved. They're old souls, however we want to describe that. The indigo children, there are terms out there for all of this. And as we grow older, we become more mature, but also we're evolving. And we're evolving not only physically, obviously, we have the aging process, but we are evolving spiritually. We're evolving psychologically. We're evolving inside ourselves in ways that can't be seen, but we know they're happening because that's kind of the way it works. So the Blue Healers themselves are a group dedicated to service. And so while there is a planet from which they come, and what they say is they are more evolved beings of the Arcturians, that's why they present as being blue. A lot, there is one area of the constellation Arcturus, as we call it, that has blue species. But they're not the only ones there. So there's a lot more going on than we think. It's just bigger than that. And so the way they describe it is that they have made a choice, that this is the work that they're going to do. Are they assisting us with healing? Yes, because that's what we call it. But anyone who heals from anything, they evolve so vastly within themselves that they're intrinsically connected.
Mm.
Because when we don't heal, we don't create that space in our bodies for wellness, whether it's physical, psychological, whatever that might be. We remain in a state that is from the past.
Okay.
And wellness is about being in coherence. Wellness is about reminding your cells of their healed and well state so that when they replicate, the natural process of just being in a body and being human, when they replicate, they're replicating in a form of wellness. That in itself informs the body and the mind, the spirit, again, of deeper connection into the unseen world or the quantum field, spiritual practice, spirituality in general, whatever people want to call it. It's kind of like spiritual teachers. They're all saying the same message.
Mm-hmm.
But there are just as many people as there are. That's another way to get to that center.
That's incredible and mind-boggling just to think about all the possibilities and all the things that means. That being said, I think the next logical place for us to go would be walking us through that cosmology. We're so unfamiliar with all the things that are out there and Arcturians and like Andromedans and
Yeah.
like we hear about starseed origins, we hear about these things, but you must have a better sense of what's their cosmology and who are they and how many are there? Like there's infinite, but
Yep.
basic
Yep.
understanding.
Sure. This is easy to describe because we have a similar experience right here on Earth.
Right.
And that is anytime you get in an airplane and you go somewhere new, what do? You get off the plane, you get your luggage, and you're in a whole new world.
Mm-hmm.
And we can read about and we can think about, or we could watch what it would be like to travel to another country on our planet, yet we don't fully feel it and know it until we're there. Because it's not just about facts. It's not just about the people, the information your brain remembers about culture. When you're there smelling and sensing and feeling into the culture because it's wrapped into everything another country would do. Same where I'm from. I'm in Hawaii. It's different here even than in California. And it's still the United States. So it's regional as well. The same is true when we are talking about dimensional beings or aliens, that they have their own set of culture and things that they do. And it's only confusing and difficult if we allow it to be. If we just say to ourselves, wow, this is this is mind blowing and I never really considered it, but I'm open to the idea that it could be a unique experience. So, for example, humans have a way that we procreate. We have ways that we need to sustain ourselves, water, food, etc. Love, connection to our families, etc. It's the same is true for all the dimensional beings. They each have their own parameters of how they relate to and connect with not only their own communities, but the universe at large. So there's a lot of respect that I experience when they visit and they communicate with me, and I translate for them essentially. there's a lot of respect. In my mind, in the conversation that's happening in the background as I'm speaking to them, I'm learning about them simply because their vibrational frequency holds the information of who they are, what their lives are like. The same is true of all the dimensional beings that I speak with. In terms of travel and where they come from, that's an issue of is it cartography? Making map making. I hope I'm using the right word. Yeah, that's just a map issue. We could look into the universe, up into the night sky, and say, oh, this constellation is there. And there are people who have mapped the stars. There's vast information about that, about the mapping of the stars. And I would encourage people to really focus on what the sensation is when they're having communication with extra dimensional beings, because we all are all the time. It's just that we have been taught out of that communication because when you're a child, it's permitted. And then you hit a certain age where it becomes fantasy or something that wouldn't be acceptable in public conversation, although that's changing rapidly and will continue to change very rapidly over the next couple of years for sure.
Yeah, that's so fascinating. And that brought up a question for me too, in terms of what your perspective is or how they've shown it to you, in terms of the relationship of our souls and, let's say, God, divine, creator, source, whatever you want to call it, and then souls, and then how we incarnate. So, for example, like if I, for me, I'll just share my perspective is, soul being a being of light coming from, that's connected to God, that source energy, and decides to incarnate here, let's say on earth as a human. So can a soul experience, let's say, like Andromedan or Palladian, like can it experience that dimension and go there, for example? Like how does that all tie in together? I'm curious.
Love this question. I'm getting really excited. Oh my gosh, I love this question. Okay, so this is really great because I did not understand this much at all. And I think we create language around things that we really, really want to understand. And we have to put it in a category that our brain already knows. And so I have asked this question of the Blue Healers a lot, and there are recordings in my public channeling sessions that are on the YouTube channel that talk about this. So I was just as surprised, I think, as everybody else when the message came through. So they talked about humanity and our soul connection. And it's, I would define the soul very simply as being the spark that is the piece of the quantum that we have elected to pull into 3D form. And so the thing that's fascinating is that most of humanity doesn't really leave 3D. Even if the body has diminished in its ability to hold the form, meaning it dies and it's gone, and that tiny bit of us that is part of that is the quantum that is encoded with a lot of information that comes from our past lives, wherever we came from before Earth, and etc. All of the dimensions, all the information is encoded in every cell of our body. So when the body's gone, it's still there. The information is still there. Now there is a traveling pattern that happens for humans, human spirits that leave the physical body and they move on. And we do have the opportunity to elect going to other places. However, the majority of humanity is so far in 3D slumber that it's confusing because it seems like it'd be free choice or free will, but there really isn't because there's too much what the beings describe as gravity around returning and the 3D experience. So then we tumble into what we call, or spiritual practices have called, the death and rebirth process. And so it's very compelling to be here. And many of us who struggle in our bodies, we're like, I just want to evolve out and not have to do this again because being a human is messy. It is
Yeah.
painful. It is, just from the second you're born, you just get squeezed and pushed and prodded. You're freezing, you're hungry. It just like, and it feels like it sets the stage for all of your life,
Yeah.
which it could, it doesn't have to. But There is the option to leave the earthly plane, but most humans want to come back. Why? Because we have a heck of a lot of fun here too. There's a lot of love, and it's in different ways. The beings talk about how fascinating we are because they have evolved out of the need for emotions, and they're not emotionless, how humans would describe it, or like psychopaths are completely devoid of the ability to feel compassion. It's not that at all. It's just that they have evolved to a place where it's not even necessary for any of that. That's a very 3D experience. But they have learned to adopt those sensations, and they will use the word love now. We love that you have come to us, and we love that you're connecting with us. So the soul's journey is really fascinating. And there are elements, I think, for humans where now we're beginning to question, if I wanted to opt out of the program here, what would I do? And there is an answer to
And what is it?
that. Well, since you're asking, um, it is about a very simple process about the breath. So the breath for us is the universal language that all humans have together. So we keep thinking it's our mind, it's our voices, it's our words, which we know the limitations of not speaking another language. You drop into another country and you're like, oh my gosh, how do I find my hotel? When yeah, very, very, very basic stuff. But the breath is the language that we carry. And as we all know, we all are a vibrational frequency that is unique. It's like a thumbprint. It's unique. And we have just forgotten how to identify it. We know it because, right, when you want to fall into a relationship, what happens? You're attracted to certain people and not other people because their vibrational pattern or frequency has an affinity for yours, and you come together in love, right? So that's how you know it exists. So the breath is a vibrational frequency, and the blue beings at the very beginning of the channeling experience were often frustrated because they'd sift through my brain and they could not figure out how to speak the words. So they used the breath. So basically what they did was very rapidly they started sending to me as a channel, they started sending through these breath practices that are the universal language. All right, so now that you understand the universal language, I'm going to finish answering the question, which is, in order to opt out of the experience, the human body needs to be devoid of tension. So you can still have one, but what happens through the course of a lifetime or numerous lifetimes, the experiences that we have, DNA, familial, cultural, etc., programming, social media programming, television programming, whatever it is, creates tension in the body, right? It's why Botox is so popular. And now they're injecting that stuff everywhere in the body. It seems it's just
Yeah.
so, because people are tense everywhere and they don't know how to relax. So the breath practice itself is designed to create softness, create space in the areas of tension in the body. Any of the channeling recordings you listen to, you will hear that exact same message every time. And people are often just, oh, let's just relax in the moment. It's like yoga. You go, you do it for an hour, you leave, and it's gone. They're talking about a lifelong release of the tension in the body to allow not only the body, but the mind, feelings, all the sensations. The more we can relax into and release all the tension in the body, the less attached we are to the body. The less attached we are to the body. So, just so you know, not only is it just breathing and relaxing, it means that you're probably going to have to address things that are creating the tension in your life.
Of
A
course.
lot of it's psychological, and a vast majority of it has to do with trauma. So it's all together in one thing. But when we release the tension from the body, we release the need for reduce or repeating trauma response. We reduce trauma response, reduce psychological unconscious behaviors through awareness, intention, relaxation. Then the breath practice comes in and reinforms the cells of that state we were just talking about with healing, which is reinform the cells of complete wellness, I'll call it. And then in that place, the cells replicate. So then it's a little bit like a conscious dying process, is what I would call it. It's like
Mhm.
making peace with everything that's going on in your life, in your heart, bringing all of your energy centers, not just the 7 or 8 that we know, but all of the energy centers in the body. There are many, many energy centers back into a state of coherence. When you're fully in a state of coherence, generally we hope that that's the moment of passing, with the selection or self-selecting out of the human experience. And then the universe becomes much more open to humans transitioning into a whole new thing
Mm.
out of humanity.
Yeah, that's fascinating. And it makes so much sense. I mean, trauma leaves in the body. The body knows, and across lifetimes, even. So it makes a lot of sense that that would be a gateway to let go and just to opt out. I have so many questions. I don't know where to begin because I want to stay with Christina and sort of where the question was going about their relationship. What is their relationship to the divine, right? And what is the blue heel, or in your experience, or other species, and what they've told you about their relationship and connection to source, the divine, whatever they call it. But at the same time, if we're sticking with reincarnation, I'm super curious about the going back and opting out of the human experience, but also why so many of them opt into the human experience, right? And what
Yeah,
is that, coming and going, where it seems like you're evolved out of all of this messiness, but then you opt to come back in to remember. And it seems like a cycle of, yeah, evolution and, and then going back
sure.
in.
Yeah,
Um,
overall, it is a cycle of evolution. And you mentioned two things. You talked about uh, death and rebirth cycle of
mhm.
humanity, and also connection to the divine.
Yeah.
So all things, everything is the divine. The divine is simply the quantum where all things exist. And when we say the quantum, I think our brain likes to attach definitions to it. So the blue beings will often say, okay, as humans, you have something you called the Big Bang Theory, where everything was sort of compressed into nothing. And then it decided that it was going to do something else, and it began to expand. So the universe decided, okay, well, we've contracted all the way to the 0 point, I guess it's been called in human terms. And now we're going to expand out again. And if you think about it, everything is an iteration of some form of the divine. Plants, animals, rocks, submarines, anything, whatever you want to say. It all has come from that same source information, that in that 0 point. And we all hold all information of all things from that point. It's just that in our expansion process, where we are in the earth plane and this earth experience, we've opted into defining ourselves by what we look like right here and the whole earth experience itself. We have chosen, out of the myriad possibilities of the universe, to join whatever that information is together. The blue beings use the word gravity a lot in our cells of information, right? Why don't we look like our siblings? Oh, well, we wanted to be different. And there we are. So everything is connected to the divine, as we're calling it, in our own way. I mean, 100%. The problem, I think, is in trying to explain it, is when people think that the divine is somehow outside of themselves. Religions do that a lot. There's only one person who has the answer, or God's up in the sky, and when this happens, you get to. It's a cause and effect. If you're good, you get to go to heaven and be with God, or whatever the story is. If you're not good, well, you go somewhere else. And really, it is all about what we're electing in the moment for ourselves. And we have choices, but then if our belief is that it's outside of ourselves, then it will always be outside of ourselves. So I've spoken with the blue healers about that. in the channeling sessions. It's in a recording somewhere. And they have basically said, this is a curious question. Why would you ask us about the divine? We are simply part of everything. So for us, it's not separate. It's not somewhere else. There's nowhere to get to find it. So it's a non-conversation. What happens for the beings once they release themselves, if we want to say that they have had an evolutionary process, and for all beings it's different, so well, I'm just using human terms to describe something. If we say that they have evolved out of the need for a 3D form, moved into 5D as the blue beings are in the 5D form, that conversation no longer exists. It's just, so they have had to extract that information back from us in order to even have the conversation with me to give to all of you. So for them, they find it fascinating when, at the beginning, when I was first channeling, people would ask questions, very, very real 3D questions, and they would say, how curious that you're even asking this. Don't you know that you already have the answer, is what they would say a lot of times. And I would say, all right, guys, we got to be a little more specific because it's not landing. So that's more of the divine part. The reincarnation part is, think of the amazing and wonderful narratives that we have on our planet about reincarnation, right? We have entire groups of people who are like, that doesn't exist. We're a candle, and when it blows out, we're gone. And then there are entire religious groups where it's absolutely a concept, and it's coming, it's happening, and they live it. They're expecting it. So there are diverse stories, narratives, mythology on our planet that dictate how we continue to view and experience things such as reincarnation. For the blue beings, it's very obvious, and they find it kind of interesting that people on Earth would not believe in what we call reincarnation, because it seems to them, it's very obvious that the vibrational pattern and frequency of who we are, or our spirit is, how it represents itself, reiterates into just another face, another body, another location. And yeah, that vibrational frequency of the body is slightly different, but the core foundational vibrational frequency of the soul, as we call it, is exactly the same.
Right.
So for them, it's like you're just putting on different clothes, spending a little time wearing this outfit rather than the last one.
Right.
Right.
That's fascinating.
Yeah, I love this. I love this so much. And I had another question, and now I can't think of it. So I'll pass it on to Louisa. I know that she
I
had.
have 1,000 questions. Okay, that makes a lot of sense. And then what is so special about this place, or not, that it seems like a lot of things, because this is definitely a special place. I mean, there's angelic beings, and there's ascended masters, and there's all sorts of things like colliding, and dragon energy, and this energy, and then now interdimensional beings. What is it about Earth, and how are they supporting us, helping us, or what is their role and their connection to our collective?
Yeah. It's funny because before you start the question, they're already telling me the answer. That's why I'm smiling.
They're very present. Yeah, I can.
They- I know, it's why your brain is going a little out
Yeah.
there. Yes, there's a term for it in shamanism too, but it's the same sensation that once they start coming through, the information starts coming through. And it doesn't matter that we're far away from each other, the vibrational frequency is coming to you and to the audience. Um, so is it a fascination with humanity, or is it just a vocation? That's a good question, right? So they are a group who have decided to assist. And this particular group that I work with, and I'm not going to say they're the only ones. If I could even give you a number on the sheer volume of dimensional beings who are on, in, and around Earth, probably as many as there are individuals on the planet, because I'm seeing them more and more all the time. Uh, so the blue beings themselves have explained to me, and do now, that they find our planet beautiful, interesting. It's as if you were to go, they were to go into a library, and there is such a library that holds all the information of the universe, that they took out a volume from the Earth manual, the Earth section of this library of the universe, opened it up and said, I'd like to check this out. So it's very simple. It's the same as us. How do we pick where we're going to go on our next vacation? Some people repeat the same place, and some of us have a bucket list that is so long that we would have to be traveling constantly to see everything we want to see. So they've selected this place and they stay here. Their existence right now is on what they call like a space station. They don't travel back and forth to their original source place. They could, however, they are more equipped to stay where they are because the space station, I'm using our words, not theirs. Their space station is like a ship. It travels around and it moves through dimensions and time. They don't exist in time like we do. And they enjoy watching humanity unfold. And they're very, very much in the empowerment, like empowering us to become more within ourselves. So even when people ask questions, a lot of times what they will do is say, okay, we're going to turn this back to you because you know the answer. And if they don't, they offer information that will simply awaken what is already known within the individual asking the question. So as far as I know, this particular group has not been channeled. Maybe it's out there because the three that I work with when we started the channeling process, so the three that come when I ask if they will channel, and they agree to do it. It's a collaboration, they say. And what they say is that I asked them if they would like to be channeled, because I always knew I was a channel, but I wanted to have a little bit more of, I wanted to be part of the conversation rather than being taken over by a species that had an agenda.
Right.
So I asked them rather than waiting to be approached.
Mm.
And so they agreed to the experience. And at the beginning, it was bumpy for both of us. And then it gets easier every time. And now I'm channeling while I'm not, I have my eyes open and I'm talking to you, but I can hear their voices, which is true, but I don't often do that.
Right.
Oh, that's interesting. So usually it's been kind of like an in how what would you call it? Out of body experience, in body experience, like how they kind of take over and you do you remember
It's
when that
it's a
happened?
trance state.
Okay.
Yes, some of it. It's a trance state, and I allow them to stand behind me,
Mm, gotcha.
not to take over my body or my voice. The tone of my voice does change when I channel, and it was more noticeable at the beginning. But the tone of my voice will change simply because they are extremely gentle beings,
Mm.
and I'm a very assertive human. So my voice softened quite a bit. You can hear my voice is actually changing over the course of time. I'm curious to see how that evolves. But
Yeah.
I hear a lot people can't hear me anymore, that I speak too softly for people to hear me. And that's a new experience. I would say that years ago I was very loud instead. Um, yeah,
That's wow.
that's
I love this so much. I had a question that popped up as you were just sharing, and that is I'm curious what they've shown you or told you about just the experience on Earth where we see a lot of the duality where, we talk about the love and the peace and all of that, but then we also have the complete opposite with the war and the fear and like all of that and how
mhm.
so many humans are living that and being projections of that. So what is that? Why is that? Why is that an experience on Earth? Is there, let's say different frequencies of beings, and so there's beings that are more malicious, let's say, versus
Mhm.
benevolent beings? Like how does that whole thing work, and why do we have this experience on Earth?
Sure. First, the answer is more about just humanity specifically. And again, this question has come up and they've answered it before. So they're very excited that you're asking this question because it's one of the fundamental and most important answers to give humanity. Because the way that they've described it to me is that we have an addiction to fear and survival. Not erroneously, though. It is really a function of the evolution of the human body itself. So biologically, we are wired for survival, right? Anytime a child falls in the pool who can't swim, random people will snatch the kid out of the pool, pull people away from, cars and lift cars. The human body is wired for survival and safety. What has happened in recent years, very recent, in terms of the evolution of the human, is that our consciousness has shifted so quickly that the human body just is catching up. Because we have dense material, that doesn't mean that it can't happen quickly, because it does. And I know myself and other people would say the same thing, that we're not the same people we were 2 years, 5 years, 10 years ago. That through whatever work we have done, intentional work, we have allowed ourselves to evolve within this experience. So the addiction that we have to the need for survival has to do with chemistry on some level, brain chemistry, right? There's a jolt you get every time you're in survival and fear. And how are we replicating it? Oh, just turn on the television, right? And you can't get away from the TV, right? Gas pumps now have TVs. Why? I don't know. But I have an electric car, but I had a rental and I was like, wow, this is fascinating. There's a television on my gas pump. So it's kind of following us around a little bit.
Yeah.
And it doesn't mean that we have to shut down all TVs and not get on social media. That's not the story at all. It's about being able to be within, be coherent and connected within, and allow whatever's going on in the outside world to just do its thing without being in survival. And so and that is also related to that tension in the body that I talked about earlier, that once we release and relieve that tension in the body, illness falls away. The need for survival falls away, not because we don't want to survive, but because it's not the focal point or the axis for existence in this lifetime. It's not where we keep going back to. It's like, oh, there's a thing and it's about survival and it'll kick in when I need it. If I'm going to fall off a cliff, probably something in me is going to say, hey, might want to step a little that way. Because survival mechanism is meant to be accessed, not meant to be the reference point for all things we do in our lives. And that's what it's become. And who knows why? I don't need to define that for myself, but it's a curious possibility for us. And so when the blue healers say, breathe in space into the tension, that's what they mean, is breathe space into that need for survival. If you think about it, it's not even necessary anymore, right? We have access, most of us on the planet, and for those who don't, that's a different conversation, but most of us have access to water and sustenance, sunlight, love, connection, the foundational things that are needed for survival for the human.
Yeah. I love that.
Yeah, I love that. The more I hear about it, it's just such a different frame of reference. And it's just when you think about, well, for humans, good and evil is just such a, clear part of our reality. And then when you talk to them and their logic is just completely, it just turns everything on its head and it's a completely different logic. And for them, those are just not even considerations and not problems. So it's just fascinating. The more you learn and the more you dive into these topics, is just great to hear that. Okay, there's so much ground to cover still, and I have so many questions. I wanted to ask you in terms of, again, going back to the cosmology and organizing things in my head. But I've heard about a council and talking about their relationship or other species relationship with humans, what is the Galactic Council and how do they work with, oh my God, my voice went.
Welcome. Yeah.
Yeah. And how do they work with humans?
Yeah. Two things I want to talk about voice at some point in this podcast or another
Yeah.
about the energy center of five and how significant it
Five.
is to the extra
Mm.
dimensional connection and communication. It does
Mm-hmm.
come through five. So they're probably speaking to you as well. The Galactic Council is a great place to come in this conversation because it does exist. It does exist. There are parameters within the universe for activity. And there are groups, as I said, there's a galactic library. I have visited it, very different from our libraries, but it is a library where all the information of the evolution of experiences, like humanity has its own shelf in essence, of information, and it's constantly regenerating, not in the way that you would think, like, oh, it's all in the quantum, oh, this is great, just access it. But it literally is in volumes of and accessible information so that beings from around the universe can come and learn. Um, there's another purpose to it as well. But with that, the Galactic Council is a group of beings from throughout. There's universal principle with that, and then there are also more localized. So specific star systems, galaxies. It's almost like you have leadership at the top, and then right, and the leadership at the top is the quantum. It's not a being;
It's everything. It's
it's the quantum.
God. Yeah. Yeah.
It's yeah. If we want to call it God, great, give it a name. But it's the place, that 0 point, that place from which we all have emerged
Mm-hmm.
in the universe. And the Galactic Council, I think that you may be asking about, is the one that's more localized.
But I'm
And
fascinated about this other council. Tell us more.
well, the universe is big, and it's we while we do have access to all of the information, we are limited by our human brains. There's a capacity there. It's limited by the 3D experience and the fact that we're still evolving to even use our brain as much as we possibly could. And
Yeah.
that's exciting. That's exciting news. There's more to it than just this. We aren't done, thank goodness, right? After we were just talking about fear and fighting and
Yeah.
war and terrible things humans do. I for one feel grateful that there's more to it than just this.
Yeah. Absolutely.
But the Galactic Council is a group of people, beings, I shouldn't say people because that's not true, who are sort of overseeing the areas. So there's a galactic group that works just in our star system, and it's greater than we think. We've defined it as a very small thing. And they keep order. They are there to dissolve disputes, which are not as common as we would think. And it's not for the reasons that we think, because we want to apply 3D information to what's happening in other dimensions. And it's not a 1-to-1 ratio
Mm-hmm.
on that. And the Galactic Council will stay out of human affairs for the most part. But there also is, they don't want us to perpetuate our own extinction.
Yep.
So there is intervention if it's absolutely necessary. But a lot of the intervention is coming in this form instead, where it's like, hey, let's awaken and assist humans in reconnecting to the heart and reconnecting to coherence in the physical body so that all that other stuff isn't necessary.
Again, fascinating. So, okay, yes. Now I'm applying very human logic to what we just talked about. But so they are observing, protecting, and helping us evolve in a way. Okay.
Mostly, the evolution happens on its own.
Right.
Mhm. A lot of the evolutionary process at this time is happening through the awakening of starseed information.
Mm. Yeah.
Just throwing out another topic.
Yeah.
This is the overview of everything, and we can
Yeah.
come back to some specifics another time.
Exactly. Exactly. This is the
Yeah.
overview episode, and then we'll go in depth into some other things. This is just fascinating. And then I have so many questions about how they operate in connection with things that are more familiar to us, like the
Mhm.
angelic realm and like other types of beings. And I think I have so much curiosity about Jesus and anyways, and how does it all connect up
Yeah,
there? Which I think it's a whole other episode. But if you could high level speak to that.
sure. The universe does a telescoping thing. What's happening in one place is also happening in another place, different scale, another iteration. But as the Big Bang Theory is the breath, right? It's an expansion and contraction of energy, and it nourishes and nurtures itself. So it's this expanding, contracting. That's probably the biggest scale of the in breath and out breath of the universe, right there, is that. Um, I'm sorry, go back to the question. I didn't want to lose track of that. I was about to go off on a tangent, but let me get really specific.
Let's go to the tangent. Back to how do these types of beings interact with
Yeah.
beings like ascended masters or angelics or
Mhm.
other things that are more
Yeah.
connected to our kind of human cosmology?
Great. Got it. So we all have ways that we define things, and the angelic beings are simply a dimensional being.
Right.
So, and they don't live in a separate realm per se, although they are unique in the ways they present, for sure. They are very unique in the ways they present. Ascended masters, and this topic just came up in a previous conversation, the very last channeling session I did. It came up about um, I'm trying to think of the answer specifically that they gave in the moment. You were there, weren't you, Louise?
I
I
wasn't
think
able
you
to
were
be
there.
there
You
until
weren't able to.
now.
Oh, I think it was your question,
It was
actually.
my question and I missed
It
it.
was your
Yeah.
question. Yeah. So the realms themselves, the angelic beings, and forgive me if I start going off topic, I'm getting pretty far out there. So you can just circle me back around if
Okay.
that happens. The angelic beings are often in the space when I channel. They often are in the space. They have a different quality. Ascended masters, however, are a little bit different. Let me explain that in terms of the way it was answered. And that had to do with basically when we relieve the tension within the body, release the need for survival, choose to or elect to release the experience we're having on earth. And that's an ascension. But we are all incrementally, and I want to say we all are, but there are some people who are not, and that's okay. But most of us who are doing spiritual work, meditation, yoga, etc., we are incrementally ascending from the need for being in the 3D form. Now we have dictated in in our lives that there's a life expectancy. I think we ought to just change that whole idea. We could live longer than just 89 or whatever it is these days for males and females, um, to elect out of that as well. But we're ascending just being here in this conversation. Why? Because we're opening to the possibility that we no longer need to be a part of the survival mechanism within the human body. Think about those who have been born without that need, right? We have a few, and most of these are the high level spiritual teachers who have impacted the entire planet. So, without you mentioned Jesus, that's a name we could certainly use in this situation, is that he was ascended to the point of opting out, but he elected to return. Did he suffer? Yes. Did he make it the focal point of his teaching? No. Why? Because it wasn't necessary. He knew that the parameters of, and I'm speculating, giving you words that I think would apply. He knew that the core of his teaching wasn't about perpetuating the need for survival or suffering. And all of the teachings were about that: acceptance, love, connection, and that there would be suffering, but it's not who you are as a spiritual being.
Mm-hmm.
So ascension is the big picture, ascended master. And then it also relates directly to humanity and who we are becoming by choice Hopefully, it's faster if we are cognizant of what's going on. So I hope that answered your question.
It did a little bit. I have, again, my mind is just firing in all directions. The more we know. And it's just so interesting to me that as humans, or I'm not going to generalize, this is probably just my brain and how it works. It wants to dissect and understand, but how you put it
Mhm.
in 3D
Yeah.
terms, and that need to understand reality from our perspective and from our 3D perspective, which simply does not apply. So then it's one of those things where you just have to let go and release of your perspective and, yeah, be open to other kinds of realities, and that doesn't necessarily apply everywhere in the universe, but it's so comforting to know that there's more and more wisdom, knowledge, healing coming through to earth and humanity, and that we are all ascending together.
Yes, it is. It's comforting to know we're not alone.
Yeah.
And I hear a lot from the dimensional beings that we are so in pursuit of our individuality, right? Our independence, that we forget that it's a collaborative effort.
Mm,
Yeah. They often come through as collectives
Mhm.
of species and
mhm.
types of beings, and we are just so attached to our individual
Yeah.
It's
self.
okay. It's
Yeah.
part of our evolutionary process. The way they describe it is that we're a part of the human game and
Mhm.
we don't see it as being fun.
Mm-hmm.
And we should, that we should be delighted when this new and exciting experience happens.
Mhm.
I can use my son as an example because my kids grew up in ashrams and spiritual practice, and that was their lives. That's their reference point, is having a mom who could manipulate electricity with anger and did sweat lodges. And my kids have been all over the globe and doing all kinds of amazing things. And my son having a 3D moment where he's snowboarding, I'm skiing, and he's feeling confident in himself. He's probably maybe 12 or 13 years old. So he decides he's just gonna, step on the speed wagon, and he just took off down the mountain. And I was like, wow, this is really great. Usually the first day he's more timid, he's becoming more comfortable. And then what do I see? He catches the front edge of the board, and we all know how that goes, right? For anyone who snowboards or understands what it's about. So what did you do? You throw your arms out, and he broke his arm. And he literally cartwheeled, because in skiing your skis fly off because there's a release, but the snowboard
You
stays on.
can't. Yeah.
And I'm skiing down, and I'm like, wow, I can't speed up much more than I'm going, which I did. I was moving pretty fast myself. And he's ahead of me just enough that I see the helmet go off and it's tumbling down the mountain. I have three thoughts about that. Of course, as a mother, you're like, oh, I have to find that. Don't let me forget. And the thing that happens where you're like, oh, I wonder how bad this accident is. But I see he's upright. He got his board off and he's upright, so he didn't break anything major. And by the time I get there, 5 seconds later, he throws his arm up in the air. He says, I broke my arm. He was so excited.
Oh,
And I thought, this is how we need to look at the human game. It's like,
wow.
I broke my arm. I'm so excited. I said, wow, we get to go to the hospital for the first time ever, and you'll get x-rays, you'll get a cast. This is going to be super fun. And he's like, let's do it. And I thought, that's what we've forgotten.
Yeah.
Right.
That's exactly what we've forgotten. We've forgotten, like, oh my gosh, I'm in traffic for the next hour. I'm going to be late for work. Instead of stressing, we just be like, oh, this is an adventure. Maybe I'll look out the window, and I live in Hawaii, see a rainbow. Sure enough, there's a rainbow. But we're so busy trying to struggle and be good at it, because as humans, we want to be the best at what we do. So we're all overachievers in a certain way. And we forget that this is an adventure and it's information, and the universe is saying when you're sick. And I learned a lot from my chronic medical condition. I eventually started saying, what are you trying to say to me? Instead of me trying to battle, we're always fighting the body. We're always in battle with things. It's like, what if we just showed up and work and did our jobs and stopped complaining about our bosses and oh, my wrists hurt from my keypad and maybe there's mold in the blah 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 and you know, am I getting an I really need a break and we think about that rather than oh, the adventure is in I get to sit and have this conversation with you.
Mm,
I get to love what I'm doing. What a great idea. That would be fantastic. And
yeah.
I think that's a core message from the dimensional beings. They're like, wow, you're taking this all way too seriously. It's
Yeah,
meant to be fun.
yeah.
And they say this a lot. That is a message I get a lot. It's like, wow, you really take for granted this experience you're having
Hmm. Yeah,
because they don't get to go to Disneyland
right.
unless they're watching us,
Yeah,
They don't get to snowboard unless, I mean, they could,
Right.
but they're watching us.
That's so cool. I love that. And I think that's such a beautiful way to, because I was going to ask you, like, what is there a message that they have, like anything that they
Mhm.
want us to know? And this just feels like it beautifully answers that of reminding us that it feels simple, but yet so many of us, I feel like, live in that default, like just go, 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 do, do, do. Like we forget about that, you know? So I really love that you brought it back to that. It's so powerful.
Yeah. I could go on and on. Jan, thank you so much. We've taken too much of your time. But for our listeners and anyone who is just as curious and fascinated by this as we are, please tell people where they can find you and how can they connect with you.
Sure. Thank you. It's janwakefield.com. And my YouTube handle, I had to write it down so I didn't forget, is Jan Wakefield 6070, of course, with the at symbol. And my Instagram is at Jan Wakefield and the number 22, Jan Wakefield 22. So you can find me in those three places and would love to connect with all of you. I do weekly channeling sessions right now at this point in time, Tuesday morning, 7 a.m. Hawaii Standard Time. And all are welcome. They are recorded, they end up in the YouTube channel, but being there live is really, really special because you get captured in the experience of the blue beings and their vibration frequency. So, love to see you all there.
Yeah, that's so incredible. Thank you so much. We will definitely have all of those links available for everyone in the show notes so you can go check it out. And Jan, just want to say once again, thank you so much for being here. This was so beautiful, fascinating. I feel like I've just been like soaking this all in. So this was so wonderful. And to hear about the blue healers, about the information giving us higher perspectives and awareness and all of that. So thank you again.
Thank you for having me. I'm truly grateful for this experience. It's been delightful.
Thank you so much, Jan, and hopefully see you next time and for a follow up, and we can go into all the details.
Sounds great. I'd love to do it again.
Lovely. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.